6:59, Aaron. You don't hear? Jeff Downs is attending by Zoom. Yes, Jeff is here. Leave everybody, right? I think that's it. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Madam Chair. All right, I'd like to call this meeting of November 2nd, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is the first meeting of the month, so we are focusing again on our plan of conservation and development update. So we're all here, Dan Heckenhoff, Brian Hart, John Duza, Mike Wagda, Bob O'Connor, Aaron Mannix, town planner, and via Zoom, John Guskowski. And we would like to welcome our new commissioner, Jeff Downs, who, there he is. There you are.
Yes. I'm getting over a cold, so I can't really talk that well right now. So.
Okay, well, it's good to just listen for your first meeting, I think. Right. And you have been sworn in.
No, that makes sense. Right.
Good. Welcome. So welcome.
Thank you.
That said, I think, Aaron, do you want to turn it over to you?
Sure, and Jeff, just for introduction purposes, John Guskowski is the principal of Tyche Planning and Policy Group, and he's the consultant who the town, the commission has hired to assist in the update of the plan of conservation and development. So, John,
okay. That's me.
Take it away.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get this started sharing my screen. And okay, so we recall, hopefully, last month we started hacking away at the, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We started hacking away at the implementation table, which is a compilation of all of the policies and action steps for the two sets of areas of analysis in the plan of conservation and development. And again, we split things up into natural environment and built environment based on last month's input and sort of collective editorial session. We did most of the natural environment section. We organized. I'm getting some feedback or something. I don't know if anyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not getting it on this end. Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. So we went through the natural environment policies, reorganized some stuff, deleted some stuff, moved a bunch of the preparedness and resiliency stuff from the natural environment to the built environment. And then so for this month, all of those things were sort of reorganized, and Aaron and I sort of organized and presented the built environment implementation guide. So I would leave it to the chair if you want to briefly go through natural environment, or you want to just start digging away at built.
I actually have a few comments maybe I could just put out first, and that is that John, I was having a little trouble going through the built environment implementation spreadsheet, besides just struggling with Excel a little bit. But also, we had a narrative that went with the natural environment before we got into the actual implementation. Yeah. And I don't think we're there yet with the built environment. We don't have that narrative in any draft that I've seen. So I find that, we're sort of taking it out of context a little bit, and it would be great to think, maybe this is actually something that we can talk about for next steps. But I struggled with this a little bit, I admit, in that, again, kind of just piecemeal and not cohesively and out of context. And I think that's something that, is really important for the plan of conservation and development, that we maintain that sort of overview it all the time so that we can see how things complement each other, fit together better. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, and we can, again, as I said, talk about it maybe as next steps. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah,
Similar reaction.
yes, but I
So,
also feel in some ways similar about what we still have on the natural environment. I
Yeah,
don't think it's cohesive at all.
I agree.
And the actions come in at different levels. Some are very specific.
I agree with
cut down
that
a
too.
tree, and others are.
Yeah, and I think I
Very
tend to think in terms of like going from very general to more specific,
Yes,
which would include the narrative, would be the most sort of general overview part to me. And then we get into I don't know if they're priorities or just, again, working, sort of broad stroke, big plans to smaller specific things. I don't know if that addresses your concerns, Bob.
at some level,
It simplifies it, but.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look at this as if I was building a business plan. Starting with you have three themes, which are, I know you have the shorthand word, but behind that, a lot of words that essentially establish them as three specific goals for the POC. So vitality, connectivity has a lot about it, but there's a definition for what that means. If we do it right, we know what that looks like.
Right.
So that's a high level goal you just can't get to. Then I see the policies to me are just strategies. You can't execute on the policy. It's just a way of thinking about how to achieve that high level goal. And then kind of jump down into the actions to a combination of lower level goals, kind of sub goals and actions. And they're just all over the place. And some are very specific, and you'd have to assign to a person, say, do this, and it may take a day or two. And some are very high level where you need a full team and another subset of set of thinking. And so it's all over. It's like it's not coherent.
I have that down in my notes too, that it's not coherent.
So I didn't even look at the build when I stayed on the natural environment, trying to reword things and just not kick things out, but kind of realign and put things in a different perspective way.
That's great, and if you could keep doing that, I think that'd be really
Yeah,
useful. And
certainly.
the other thought I had, Aaron, was that we're on the verge, I think, of getting the strategic plan out. And I wondered if, some of this thinking in terms of what I'm trying to say, putting it in context would be useful for everybody else to be able to see that strategic plan.
well, so, okay, I guess to back up as far as narrative, I think it was June, July, or July and August where we went through draft language, the narrative form of both the natural environment and the built environment.
Yeah,
Because
but
we-
there's more about the natural environment than there is
Yeah.
about the environment.
In the working draft,
Yeah,
you're
Yeah.
referring to?
yeah,
Yes.
which is July.
So I'll bring these two up on both on the screen. So this is the natural environment. I'm scrolling up. So okay. So we have in the natural environment there's a couple paragraph introduction about what we mean and sort of sets the stage. Madison's natural environment is highly valued. We do an inventory of plans and studies. The POCD, coastal resilience. We note our existing resources. We will be adding maps as we go. Note boards and commissions. And then get into the policies and actions. And each policy does have a paragraph to it.
Right.
So I'll note that in the built environment, we have the outline of what this will include. We didn't do the framing. The built environment in Madison is this. These are the commissions. Those are. We need to build that sort of part out. But we did write sort of the paragraph for each policy. So we sort of have the lower 60%. We haven't filled in sort of the throat clearing upper 40% for the built environment. We sort of jumped into the actions based on our conversations.
And what's the date of that draft? Because I'm not sure
That's
we all.
August.
This is August 2023 notes.
Yeah, it's certainly not the one that's posted on the website, and I only have a hard copy of July.
I've only had a July.
So.
Okay,
we
well,
don't have-
we can, yeah, so I apologize if we didn't circulate the correct
That's
version.
okay.
So
I
there,
noticed it when I
yeah.
went to look at the spreadsheet, and I thought, well, wait, we don't have the
Yeah.
language yet to kind of back it up.
And there was, I thought there was some wordsmithing that was done here, but I don't know, maybe not a lot. Okay, so we can back off of that and perhaps in the next month, add some of the flesh in the introductory parts.
Yeah, and
Before
all the
before
study
we dig in.
reports, the study reports that have been done in the town for the built environment are extensive and I
Mhm.
think really useful for us to all have in there and maybe even take a look at.
Yeah.
And,
Too long.
Yeah,
Well, to that end, I think we haven't really even done that much of a list of what those studies are. Is there a little couple minute brainstorming you want to point out some of the studies?
I don't know, Erin, if you've done a list, but I've tried to do a list myself from what I could find online.
Go ahead.
But I think it would be worth doing maybe by our next meeting to pull that all together and also all the commissions and committees that are involved
In the built environment.
with built environment or departments, even town departments.
So what? Did you want to tell us what you have in your list of plans?
In my list, facilities assessment, elementary school plans, the Madison education specs, affordable housing. There's a town facilities. And even going back though to the Wall Street or the Bradley Road vision study. Of course, the 2013 plan of conservation and development. Aaron, there may be more. That's just what I've been able to find.
So the wastewater facilities plan.
Wastewater was another one, and they're sort of
Which
subcategories
isn't
of that.
completed.
Yeah,
I mean, we have one from the 1980s.
there's a
You can
1980s
refer
that
to.
needs updating.
Yeah.
And I think
They're
they're
in the
focused on
process.
certain aspects as opposed to an overall report, but even the 1980s one, I mean, Aaron, that would be interesting for us to see. Because I think that, when we get to talking about the built environment, especially in North Madison, we have the limitations of septic and well water. And, is that by choice or is that a decision we want to make going forward? Or, how does that impact development going forward? Again, it gives history and context for us. And I'm happy to help you, Erin, in any way. I can see that your shoulders are getting a little lower with the weight we're putting on it, but
It's not complicated. I mean, these are, all of the plans that referenced are available online.
Yeah.
So
And
I
then
found them
and then
online,
it's kind of just a matter of, once we have the list, is doing, a paragraph or less length sort of book report on the status of each one. It's yeah, fairly straightforward.
Great.
Okay. So we can compile that, and so for the next meeting, we'll have the sort of upper 40% of the built environment chapter fleshed out.
That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Does it make more sense to walk through this August worksheet describing the policies and goals rather than going through if there are going to be recommendations for changes to that, as opposed to going
Yeah,
through?
if you want, just read through, because they're relatively short. If you want, we can just read through the introductions to the policies under the 3 subject areas. So if you, I'll proceed. So this is built environment under vitality and connectivity. Policy A, connect residents both within and beyond Madison. And if you don't mind, I'll just read it so you can listen. Ensuring that Madison's current transportation systems are improved and expanded upon is vital to maintaining and increasing their use. Madison's train, bus, bike, and pedestrian infrastructure is key to reducing our community's car dependency. Encouraging more residents to use these systems not only helps decrease traffic and pollution, but also increases community health, safety, and happiness. To support this policy, the following actions are recommended, and that's where we go into those. You can comment here, or we can just absorb them for now, and then we can think about them.
Well, it's
Second-
great to see they exist.
It provides a little context for the blast of goals or of actions. Second is improve and expand town infrastructure and resources, recognizing the fundamental role that modern and efficient infrastructure plays in supporting economic growth, public safety, and quality of life. Madison is committed to improving and expanding its infrastructure capacity. While investments in infrastructure can become costly, they are critical for the resiliency and vitality of Madison. Improving infrastructure now avoids even costlier repairs and improvements later. By being forward-thinking, Madison can plan for the next decade of infrastructure improvements and understand their impacts. To support this policy, the following actions are recommended. Sorry. Did someone say something?
No,
Oh, geez, weird feedback. I'm like talking back to myself. Okay, resilience and sustainability. Policy C, protect and preserve historic resources. Recognizing the intrinsic value of our historic landmarks, structures, and cultural assets, Madison is dedicated to preserving and celebrating our past for present and future generations. Preserving important sites and information provides the town with opportunities for education, recreation, tourism, and more. Madison must ensure that its policies and regulations are not at odds with historic preservation, and that the protection of historic resources is always a goal for the town. To support this policy, etc. Policy D, prepare Madison for future climate change emergencies and management. As the climate crisis creates new and evolving challenges for the community, Madison must work to prevent, mitigate, and adapt to the numerous negative impacts of climate change within the built environment. This undertaking requires collaboration between federal, state, and local government, technical experts, and the general public to understand and address Madison's capacity to respond to various climate change emergencies. It's a good long sentence. From this understanding, the town can prepare itself for future climate change events and management. To support this policy, etc. And then under opportunity and growth, seek opportunities for economic growth in appropriate areas of Madison. Madison is committed to fostering a diverse and thriving business landscape. Our community's economic resources contribute to the quality of life for residents, as well as Madison's overall resiliency. Understanding that the infrastructural constraints of development, such as sewer and parking availability, can help the town shape its growth. Through guided efforts to support the town's economic prosperity, Madison can continue to be a place where businesses thrive. And then lastly, housing policy F, create and improve opportunities for housing in Madison. Recognizing the growing demand for diverse and accessible housing options, the town of Madison is committed to fostering a vibrant and inclusive community by expanding housing opportunities. It's important that Madison creates housing opportunities for all life stages, household types, and income ranges. Addressing barriers to development is key to meeting Madison's current and future housing needs. To support this policy, etc. So those are the framing policy
Yeah.
statement.
and just to recap, we went through this exact worksheet, in fact, one that had edits from you, Carol,
Right,
at the September meeting.
right.
So
It's nice to see though, a cleaned up version and have them, so we see how they fit together.
Yeah, no, so I apologize for not circulating this properly.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this is the exact copy that we went over in September. I'm sorry to send it.
So collective amnesia about that.
And, and maybe we missed an email or an attachment or something as well, so.
There's been a lot of turnover on the commission. Don't worry about it.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so where would you like to go from here? Do you want to go back and talk about the natural environment spreadsheet?
Can I ask a question is how to structure this? So we've broken it up into the natural environment and the built environment, and that causes some conflict for me because there's a lot of overlap.
Right.
Is that a traditional way approach, or is that something we chose to do?
It's actually the regional plan is basically this with also the human environment added as a third. So there is a model that we're using in a way.
Yeah, I understand the idea of using whatever the theme is, and looking to develop policy that support both the natural environment and the built environment. To me, it's we've separated them so that they're not connected.
I feel that's something
And
that's missing.
There's so much overlap.
Yeah,
And there's some talk in the built environment, which is exactly what you said in the natural environment, and it's gonna be hard to craft into something.
Well, so I have another question then to throw out at this point, and that is, John and Aaron, we're looking at the implementation sort of tables as spreadsheets. And I know it's on the outline, it's listed at the end, but is there a reason not to include it in the main body text? And then I think you can address some of those issues, Bob, by saying, this is something that applies to both and they're interrelated and.
I mean, so each of the actual implementation items are here in the body of the in the body of the plan.
They are, but is there a reason not to just go ahead and put the implementation right there?
No, not necessarily. It just in terms of flow of the document. If you're just sort of reading it and you run into it,
It's
and you
all
run into a
placement is
table.
handy, but you kind of lose the context of why we're saying these things.
What's the implementation, the description of the policy?
Well, your action items, that's your, I mean, and I think we've seen this in our existing P O C D and the structure of the strategic plan and our
Yep.
coastal resiliency. They often have an implementation table at the end of
Right.
going through and highlighting those goals.
Oh, John Morgan is here.
And identifying, who the responsible party is. That's your
Right. John
worksheet, I
Morgan,
guess.
welcome.
Yeah,
Your
sorry,
hand is raised.
I've been here for a while. I guess I joined as not a panelist. But if I'm looking at this implementation plan, it is exactly what it's the list. It is the list of what we just went through. It just adds the organization, entities, and priorities.
Right.
That's correct.
So I'm kind of confused on what are we actually talking about here then?
You mean with an implementation table? Or
Are we-
inserting it into
Are
the
we
body?
saying we should put the implementation table into the body of the document? Is that the only
I
question?
was just wondering if there's a reason why, since you list all the action items in the body, why don't you just add who's responsible for those
Yeah.
and kind of be done with it? I mean, you could also maybe pull it out as a separate appendix or something at the end, so it's easier to reference, but it's not like we're creating a huge document
No,
compared to previous TOCDs also.
it might, Rita, it's stylistic. And again, what is preventing you from doing that? Absolutely nothing at all. Stylistically, I personally perceive, the plan as a narrative document that you would sort of read through and sit with. And then we do the separate implementation table to be almost like your once the plan is adopted, you as town officials, as well as the Board of Selectmen, as well as each department, should have sort of the short version, and the short version is sort of the implementation table as to-do list, and and then that's the sort of thing you would sort of check every year, every 6 months, every 2 years, whatever, and sort of say, okay, here are the things that are assigned to us. How are we doing? And then, if you get to one of those and thought, geez, what the heck were we thinking with this goal? Well, then you can kind of go back to the narrative of the plan. But it's meant to be sort of the tear off to-do list, your checklist for delivering upon it. But if it's useful to have the reference to who would be involved in each of these efforts in the narrative of the plan, we could structure that too. But it's that's how I envision.
I wonder then if, to Bob's point too, of, why are these our priorities or why are these our policies, our tasks or whatever? Should we put more language into the main body then, rather than just list them and then list them again? But maybe list them, but describe a little bit more about them, and that would be an opportunity to talk about what they're related to, why we think this is important, how it connects with, between the built and the natural. I mean, I don't know.
Are you referring to each action item
When we
to have
list
a
them in the
narrative?
text,
for
yeah, when
the-
we list them in the narrative, should we
or for the
expand upon that
policy?
a little bit so that it's not just a list?
Here's, to your point, so if I just look at the first policy A on the natural environment. Action A is conduct a natural resources inventory. There's no reason given for doing that, and there's
Right.
no direction as to what to do with the output. It's a specific task that when it's done should be slotted in some place to be used. It's not called out at all, I mean, inferred. The
Right, so,
HAS mapping of key natural resources, that's a little easier. But if you start looking at these, they kind of roll up into more higher level goals. And the way I looked at it, I said, one of the first goals in that is establish a public portal to inform residents about the natural environment found in Madison where different resources can be found and ways to access them. To do that, the first task is going to be find out what we have. That's conducting. The second one is build a website so you can put it up. The third one, we shouldn't be telling someone to conduct natural resources. We should say, figure out how to tell everyone in Madison what we have, how to use it, how to fund it. And then give it to someone and let them get the specific task. We've done this is micromanaging. And I started counting, there's 73 actions.
Yeah, we could
It's never at this level.
consolidate
We can
or,
bring it together and make
Yeah.
a story. I go back to the idea, I said, well, I can't sell what's there because I can't relate to it, and there's no, like Carol, like you're saying, there's no story to it. Why are we doing this? Because we have got a lot of stuff that we should tell people about it, not everyone knows.
and, and looking back sort of historically of what happened in the last 10 years and now here we are and what we project and here's what we're thinking, yeah.
Some continuity.
Continuity and also just, explaining why and how, yeah.
Well, I agree. I think you need more rationale, right? So we look at things like, for example, in the built environment policy F. So the paragraph that John showed provides the context, and that's good. But when you go to these action items, and some of these things, these actions are really impactful, might even call it radical. I mean, for example, F7, just zoning regulations such as minimum lot sizes, densities, targeted as of right multifamily houses. That's obviously a very big idea. And the question is, well, why? What's the goal? And even
That's
if
it.
they did also
come from?
in action F7, I mean, the other thing too is that it's too big. It says adjust zoning regulations, which is a big deal, to encourage, quote, elements of housing development. Well, I'm not even sure what that means, but I think what it means is to encourage affordable housing. And if that's what it means, then that's what it should say. So anyway, so I agree that it needs to be a little more rationale, and then some of these things need to be clarified a little bit, in particular F7, which stands out as a big idea that needs to be clarified.
so
John,
I guess,
does that make sense to you?
are you talking to me or to John Morgan?
John Guskowski, yeah.
Well, so I think the thing that I maybe not understanding, and maybe because I spend my life doing this stuff, that it's a little bit more intuitive, and I should put myself in your shoes a little bit. When you ask, well, let's go back to the prior discussion about the natural environment. When the commissioner is saying, well, conduct a natural resources inventory. Well, why? What are we doing? To me, that flows pretty directly from the policy, which is focus on understanding and sharing our knowledge of the natural environment. And we talk a little bit about why the natural environment is important in this paragraph, is the value of our connected natural systems. And so what are we going to do about that? Conduct a natural resources inventory is kind of precisely what you said, which is find out what we've got. That's a natural resources inventory.
That's a very specific action. It's not a goal.
Right.
Like, you do it.
That's not a goal. That's why we call it an action. It says
It's
action.
the goal. I
What?
guess maybe
The
that's
goal
where-
is another word for policy.
No,
Policy
Yeah,
is the goal.
the policy is a strategy, it's an approach to achieving something. You can actually never.
And so the broad goal, I think the broad goals, I think we can call are the three paired concepts: vitality and connectivity.
Yes.
So should we want to put the word goals there, and then would that clear everything up?
No, I've already translated all that in my head, I'm fine.
Okay.
I want to change everything.
We could change anything.
But that's very high level. Vitality and activities is aspirational.
Aspirational, yeah.
Sure,
We're not
that's what a
gonna
goal is, isn't it? Isn't a goal
No, no,
aspirational?
no, no, no. There's different
It can
levels
be.
of goals. And John, I know you've done it. I've done this my whole life too, building strategies and plans and all. So I'm trying to morph what I know from business into what would work in an environment like this. So I struggle at times.
Which is also why I think it would be great for us to see the strategic plan.
That's a good point.
Which
Yeah.
talks in much more sort of sweeping aspirational goals. Wouldn't you say, Aaron?
It's also source.
It
It's
is,
a
and we
what?
not, and we want to make sure that we kind of complement it, but also follow through on some of their.
Well, we've shared with the commission all of the public outreach and included that in our, in receiving public comment. So these items are specific feedback. Some of them more
Sure.
specific than others that we've received from the public and other stakeholders
Right.
during our open discussions on natural and built.
And
Environment.
That should be taken into account to shape what we come up with, but.
Which is kind of what created these overarching policies
Right.
based on,
You can tell that it was collected from a bunch of different sources because there's no, the word of today is cohesive. There's not a consistency between each of the actions, some are very detailed, some are not. But to the point that John was making, I just want to go back to it, because it's going to help me a lot to try to get my head around this. Vitality, the themes are like the high level goals. So if you're a company, you can say, we want to be number one in customer satisfaction. The company with the greatest customer satisfaction, if anyone, you can measure that. But you then need to develop, well, how are we going to do that? That's your policies, those are your strategies. We're going to do this, this, and this. When you have a strategy, the next section is you don't do an action, you say, what are the sub-goals to help me achieve that strategy? The strategy could be wrong. But if you achieve the 10 goals you want, then you look to see if it's moving the needle. But then you need those sub-goals, and then after that, the actions. You can't assign a team a strategy and say, make it happen tomorrow. What are your actions? You need to be able to measure it. And I think as a 10-year plan, we need to break down the goals a little more than where they are, which is vitality and connectivity. We'll never know. But if we say, build a public portal that allows us to tell everyone what we have in Madison, we can say that was done. And then give that to someone. Say, now break that down into 28, 50, whatever actions you want, make it happen. Tell us how much and how long. And then we'll say no, it could be too much. But that's how I like to start we want vitality and connectivity is a nice high level vision aspirational goal. And then we've identified a number of strategies that will allow us to achieve that high level. Now we need goals underneath it to make that strategy real.
So you can see the linkage.
It's,
You're using goals twice.
yes,
And I'm not sure what the difference between what you're saying is. So we have a specific action, what I think is a specific action item, which is update GIS mapping of all key natural resources and create a public map portal. Is that too vague or too specific in your mind?
it's a level down.
From
So
what?
think of it this way, in my old parlance, the themes would be visions. This is our vision. We want to achieve this. This is a vision for the town to become vital and connected. That's our vision. Then you go down to how we're going to do that. Those are the strategies to achieve that vision. And then underneath
Which we're calling policies.
right, policies are to be the strategies,
Right. Okay.
right? And then after that, then it's okay to make that policy, that strategy, to implement that policy, we need to be able to measure something.
Right.
That is not an action, it's a goal. Because there's going to be a lot more actions than it was here. That's, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm fine with that. I'm trying to translate my old way of thinking
Your
to
business experience, what?
far more challenging to me now. Running a company.
I see what
Far
you're
more challenging.
I see what you're doing.
Still is impossible.
so your action item, you feel ahead of a conduct a natural resources inventory, there needs to be a goal
That is-
that you're
that is a
missing
piece.
goals.
Yeah,
in
that
it.
is a piece, that, yes, so it's the vision, the strategy, the goal. The themes, the policies. And then we don't have the goals. Some of the goals, actually, we do have some goals. They're mixed in with the actions.
They are kind of inconsistent.
But then underneath that, some of the actions stay actions, some of the actions become goals. That's what I was trying to work with today and kind of redraft.
To pull out
Yeah.
what you see as goals out of these actions
And I'm
versus.
crafting things based only on what I see. I do not have the benefit of having participated in all the exploratory stuff.
So,
So I'm just kind of winging it.
No, but that's a good
You gotta
test
hold
to
me
see if it works.
Yeah,
You
gotta
know,
hold me to task.
by not participating in all that, you can say if just this stands on its own.
It does, to me, it does, and it's too confusing.
okay, so.
Sorry, John, to be having this reaction now when you thought we were gonna
Yeah, I
be
know. I'm
productive
really sorry.
going through the built environment, but I think it's good to have it.
Yeah.
So, and John Morgan is giving suggestions for a goal. I guess, so the vitality and connectivity, we do discuss earlier in the working
Yeah.
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 draft to explain those,
Right.
right? How do you feel about, and maybe this is more of an organizational challenge that we have and not necessarily a content challenge?
It may be, yeah.
So I'm, as far as the policies, whether you call them a policy or a strategy,
Policy's fine.
they mean the same as, I mean, we went through these already to get commission feedback. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, for the most part on the actions, I'm comfortable with them. I just think they're not organized correctly. There's a layer of goals that are missing. Some of those actions are actually goals.
The actions you have trouble with, but the policies you don't.
I agree, you can wordsmith them, that's fine. Waste a lot of time doing that, but the
It's not a
intent
waste
of
of
the
time.
policies, the intent of the policies on the natural environment are good. I don't disagree with that.
Have you looked at the built environment
I s-
ones? I mean, I think
started to, but
we
it-
did
it
go
got
through them.
so- I didn't detail, I was still focused on the natural, because I looked at this so much. I felt it would be easier for me to try to.
Well, so I guess maybe just in the interest of being productive this evening, does it make sense to revisit the natural currently and look at the action items and see which action items you're struggling and feel that they're goals? Or is this,
I was actually wondering if it would make sense for us to do a round of edits.
I was gonna say,
And
let's create a
share.
straw man that we can propose and have people tear it down as opposed to trying to build it here.
okay, so resend out
Well,
the
never mind,
natural.
I got lots of time to work on this.
Charlie's retired now.
Well, I'm just trying to get a sense of where you want to go. So,
We need a subcommittee to just draft this.
We could be working as the people who have time to spend on this could go back and forth.
well,
Maybe if
you've
you
all been invited to provide feedback through this process
And we've been-
for the last year.
And we have been, and, but I
So,
think,
yes, but I mean, edits and so I guess maybe send out the worksheet of the natural and the built that has the narrative of
yeah,
the
to have the
policies and
cleaned up
the action
version,
items.
the latest cleaned up version of a draft with the
Okay.
narratives would be great, and then.
So
plug
merge
this in.
those into the working draft.
I think so, yeah, plug it in,
The full
So
working
I'm
draft.
just asking,
yeah,
so we get it right.
That might be more efficient than discussing it.
Yeah.
Here, okay.
If you
yeah.
trust us, to
I mean,
something you can
So-
speed up.
It may sound like we,
We do
we're
it, that's
kind of
fine.
lost here, but we're not, I think we're refining how we wanna manage.
It's nothing on the
forward
paper
with
that's
the
wrong,
document.
it's just how we structure so we can communicate, it's about communication. We need to communicate this to everyone in the town so they know what it is we're doing.
Okay.
I mean,
So-
we had a really great conversation, I think, about the natural environment and this worksheet, but I don't know if we're ready yet. That's how I felt looking at this spreadsheet. I just thought, I'm not ready to dive into this yet. Without the narrative, without some context, without some continuity. and consistency. Does that make sense? Maybe we
I
lost
don't,
track of
because
that.
we did that in September,
I know,
so that's where
maybe we need
I'm
to.
struggling a little bit that you didn't get that opportunity, but that's okay.
And I
We
didn't
can
even edit
revisit
that
it. That's
document,
fine.
but I don't, we also send our edits out and then we don't see what happens necessarily.
Well, so we can go back through and maybe watching that September video would be helpful to kind of hear the comments that were raised at that meeting also. And I'm not sure who wasn't here for that.
Or I just feel like a cleaned up copy would,
But we can merge into the working draft, merge that language we merge the natural, we can merge the built
Yep.
into that.
Right.
And send that out as,
and maybe simultaneously.
An opportunity
whoever has
for
time
edits.
Can look at the spreadsheets and see, how can we, does it work with that text and are we redundant or do we want to make points where, this is the same as the natural environment, they overlap, they're interrelated, yeah.
I agree with you.
John Morgan, what are your thoughts?
I'm a little bit frustrated, I'd say. I agree with Aaron. We had talked about these sections. We had put the wording together back for both of these. And it feels like we're going backwards. If this comes down to what's an action and what's a goal, let's just somebody clear that up and let's move forward.
So what I can definitely do, because we did make some in the implementation table, obviously we reorganized some of these things. So some of the elements in the built environment and natural environment narrative are going to be reordered and reorganized. So I will make our spreadsheet, I'll take our spreadsheet and retrofit it to the working draft and send that out as the latest and greatest.
That would be great.
That would help.
That'd be super.
I think it's correct. I think one problem that makes this difficult is that we work on this for a short period, then we set it aside for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we get back to it. We say, well, gee, what was that? So makes it a little harder.
But
The narrative should be clear in where these action items, you should be able to say, okay, yeah, this is obvious why that's there. It's not coming out of nowhere and it's scary. Say, okay, this makes sense.
And yes, and Aaron, there's no reason why we can't be making edits and doing things between meetings.
Right.
So, and if that's okay with you, John, let's see, we don't want to bombard and overwhelm and have too much flying around in all directions, but I think if we start making edits, we don't have it as a Google Doc where we can see what everybody else is doing.
well, you can track your changes.
Certainly we track changes, but I think it's time to maybe open it up a little bit more. People should be encouraged to reorder the tasks or action items
And take a look.
and take a look and edit the narrative, make sure it's kind of coming together the way we hope it will.
I agree with you. It's a pain to think about it, but I agree with it.
And and some people have more time than others, so, and, some of us are overachievers and,
That I'm not.
I've been called that once, but I'm not sure it was a compliment.
It's hard to know if that's a compliment or an insult.
But it hasn't stopped me.
John, just quick, 30 seconds. But for policy F, so what it really is, it seems to me, is a plan for more affordable housing in Madison. And therefore, in that introductory paragraph that you have, I would encourage including a mention of the state policy, which is basically driving in part that need for the next 5 or 10 years, right? So I don't think you mentioned that in the
Well,
in policy F in that introductory paragraph.
I think it was a little broader than just affordable
Right.
housing. also different opportunities, different types of housing, and that's where the diversity kind of came from. Whether it's
Right.
town or apartment building, you know, those different opportunities, multifamily developments, things
Middle,
like that, that middle
Right, so-
housing. Yeah, that missing
I got that
middle
sense too.
housing.
I understand where you're coming from, but the fact is, when you look through those specifically, it's largely affordable housing, I think. That's the focus, but.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think
The
the,
Affordable Housing Committee meeting yesterday, and what it turns out that they're doing site visits to like Wallingford as a facility, and the most them would have at least the highest percentage of housing in any of these areas was 30% for new developments.
30% what?
30% of the units would be affordable.
Oh,
That's the
Others would be
A30G
market
Right.
value.
requirement.
That's pretty high.
Right, so, well,
That's the
I understand what Eric's saying, but I mean,
Yes,
look at,
that's
look at the actions, I mean, number one, are we gonna actively engage with developers to create grants or tax credits for something that's not affordable housing? And if so, why?
That's just it, that's a very specific action, right? But there's
Well,
no,
action F4, take action to reduce per unit cost of development. For who? It's for affordable housing, basically. 5, well, that's explicitly for affordable housing. 6 is scale cost needs of all residents. Well, most residents have something that fits, except for some who want or need affordable housing. And number 7 is,
I disagree, but go ahead.
I mean, if
So
we're
I
gonna
think a lot of
tax
the
credits for
housing,
people who move into $500,000 houses, I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. Right, it's an affordable housing plan, but I
which
guess
we
the
have an
diversity too.
affordable housing plan.
Right,
I-
so I guess the other point is that policy F should be a little more clear in saying that what it is, it's to create and improve opportunities for affordable housing.
I-
That's an-
I-
and
it's
therefore-
not.
I disagree, if I might.
I think you just said, I think actually, I think F6 actually it captures what the policy is. It's
Yeah.
opportunity.
Right.
Scale, because there are people who are, I mean, we just had a bunch of people come from the general residence. They all wanted to stay in Madison and
Right.
downsize. Yes, they bought a very expensive home, but they would have to leave if there wasn't a smaller footprint that didn't require maintenance.
right,
So
and
it's-
something walkable to
It's
downtown.
It's affordable housing, it's young families that,
And it is a kind of diversity. that-
yeah, it's.
When you look at our aging
I
demographic,
think
this
it's-
came
it's
up
like-
as feedback during the public outreach.
Affordable housing is a very big part of this, without question, and I think that would fall out as one of the goals, which is establish or whatever you want for the affordable housing. There should be establish a plan for aging in place or continuation of residents of Madison. You can stay here or until you die, stay here. There are housing that fits your need.
Yeah, but there's no state law that requires more $1 million condominiums for people who
So
want
that's why you have a plan to encourage variety.
It's affordable housing, and that's a priority, it has to be.
No, I agree, but you don't.
It's not the only
The
housing
only
plan.
thing has to do with housing.
It sounds like we need to describe it better.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. That's a great point. And
I
learn
wanted
from
to
what the
just
housing
take a few
committee
minutes to ask if anybody from the public here, like to say
Yeah, there are 3
anything
humans in front of us, so.
on this flurry of conversation.
I'm happy to offer some of my thoughts if they're helpful. I think you all know me, I'm Chris McKee, and I'm in front of the commission a lot. I resident in town, I care a lot about the plan of conservation and development. I probably know more about plans of conservation and development and how they're adopted and why, maybe than any of you, because we look at them to guide what we can advise clients to do. Right. Whether they have a chance to do something, whether it's just impossible, but it is sort of a roadmap to the land use.
And we call it our master plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's come up at every meeting I think I've been at in terms of what the plan of conservation development says. And people read it differently, they take sections and
Exactly.
people like me
Find what they want.
make it advocate for their client, but so the importance of it being clear and organized well is very important. I think part of the complication for you all, and there are a lot of them, is the statute tells you what has to be in the plan. And the statutes are not well written. You could write the statute much better yourselves than it's written. But there is language in the statutes like shall, have to approve
May.
certain things. Right, so I think that is a sort of governing problem with putting the plan together, and why I think in an important step, we've engaged people like John and his company, because the statute has to drive it up. So I encourage everybody to try to drill down and organize it properly and understand the words that are being used, because I think words are used and expressions are used without an understanding. A perfect example is affordable housing. It has different meanings to different people. And I'm not saying I understand it, but over the last 15 or 20 years, I've understood it a lot better than I did. And the different types of housing and how you address the affordability component really is across the board. Believe it or not, providing more housing, even at high levels, helps affordable housing.
Right.
So there's a lot to understand there and a lot to unpack when you use certain words. I don't think it's an easy task. Again, I think it's a great thing that the town engaged Tyke and John. I've worked with John on projects where you need to use precise language. For instance, amending zoning regulations. One wrong word can open up a problem you never thought you'd have.
Or the comma and the
Or
wrong
a
place.
comma, or, yeah, exactly. So, and I know that John focuses on that type of work, so I think in the plan, it's important to do that. And then my only other point was, I know you've had a whole number of sessions, and I know there's been public input through the strategic plan. The things that I wanted to point out is that the strategic plan, well, I think it's a great exercise. It makes me nervous as a resident, because I don't think there's any statutory mandate about the strategic plan. Plan of conservation and development is a statutory mandate.
So as a resident and as an attorney, it makes you very nervous.
As a
Yeah.
resident too, though, because I don't know that a strategic plan is binding upon anybody. And even as I could point to some poorly worded language in the Plan of Conservation and Development statute, at least there's some guidance. We have something to look at to see what's supposed to be in this plan. Strategic plan, I don't know that there is such a thing that dictates that. So I'm not telling you not to look at the strategic plan. I just think as the Planning and Zoning Commission, your mandate is really kind of laid out in the statute. And the statute clearly allows you to look to other sources of information, and you should. But I don't, as I sit here as a resident and as an attorney, I don't understand the interplay between the strategic plan and the Plan of Conservation and Development. If you do, you're smarter than me.
Well, so I think of it, I only think, I mean, I'm new to all this too, and we're learning. It's a steep learning curve. And,
Yeah.
you know, when have we really done a strategic plan in this town? I don't know, but, you know, business point of view is really valuable in this. And, you know, how, like, I've done strategic plans at Yale for the art gallery, you know, a
Mhm.
totally different game of what our aspirational goals are gonna be. So it was interesting to see the process that was used for the strategic plan. And I think what I'm trying to say is that we're not trying to be the strategic plan. You know, we're not trying to be just sort of aspirational and broad. We need to, as you say, you know, follow the statutes, follow what's required of a plan of conservation and development, and then be as specific as we can. And I think, you know, what I found difficult with the 2013 plan of conservation and development is that there was just so much that they tried to accomplish, and you could pick and choose what you want, as you said, and yet I don't think we can really prioritize, which I would love to do. I mean, I have my, my priorities. It would be really fun to sit down and say, okay, here's what we're gonna say is better than something else, but we can't do that either. And we sort of talked through this, which, I think it's
Yeah, I
good to
think-
have these conversations.
I
and
think
that's-
the thing that makes me sort of more concerned, not because of conflict or because somebody has an opinion one way on an issue or another, that's not really what I mean. What I mean is a strategic plan is gonna be implemented or put in place. There's no provisions for updating, re-looking at it, taking another look at it with respect
It
to
is being called a
particular.
living document.
Well, okay, but in the plan of conservation and development,
Yeah.
you guys have the ability to continue to refine your plan.
Yeah.
I know everyone wants to only do it every 10 years, and we see
But
part of
it's
the reason
also-
why we only want to do it 10 years.
Exactly.
But it is and can be modified by you. Any resident can petition to amend the plan of conservation and development. You don't see it much, but there is at least a structure in place for how you do it.
And there are also unanticipated things like the pandemic we use as an example,
Correct.
which really kind of changed our worlds. And we need to
Absolutely.
respond to that for climate change and how that's affecting us, and what our models are and everything. But this is really helpful, I think, to
Yeah,
have your
yeah.
input and,
Is there
And I-
more public input? I guess that was the last question I wanted to.
yes, there
I
will
know
be.
have there been like brainstorming sessions and, because I look at the action items and there's like 3 or 4 things that I wish I had put into the public thing, the public input for action items. Some of which have been kicking around for a long time, some,
We're still
Yeah.
drafting, as
I
you
can
can see,
see-
we're still working.
I can send the worksheet that we shared with our stakeholders.
Yeah,
yeah.
That
And-
are
and just
available.
as an example, and I don't want to waste any more of your time, but as an example, we have a WPCA. And I know that there's always been discussion about some type of wastewater facility for downtown to promote more commerce downtown. But I happen to know that there are systems in town that are governed by DEEP, septic systems, I
Right,
mean.
right.
That have way more capacity than they need. And I had always thought that if you have a facility downtown and you have capacity, why shouldn't
Share.
you be able to share it?
Yeah.
And the WPCA is the method by which you can implement such a system. And to me, that's low hanging fruit, because there are places downtown right now that have excess capacity. So, that's like, to me, I don't know how that could be controversial. It's allowing less septic systems to be put in the ground, and the ones that are there that aren't being utilized to be shared. We ought to be grabbing that low hanging fruit, I think. But I hope that there's more ability to share ideas. And again, the last thing I would say is ultimately the plan of conservation and development, I guess, has to be pared down to those types of goals and policies. And I don't tend to understand the difference between that, but like you folks do, but they have to sort of be non-controversial. They have to sort of be, yeah, we have to do this. We may all disagree about how we do it and what the action items are,
But attainable.
they have to be something striving towards that somebody can't look you in the eye with a straight face and say, I don't agree with that. And I assume that's what the policies are, and that's what John is trying to direct from there downward. So I look forward to participating more. This is the first time I've been able to get to one of these meetings, so.
Well, I
happy
mean,
to
we've
help
also
in any
talked
way.
about, should we get pretty far along in our draft before we present it? And you can see, we're still working through so much of this. And, we were supposed to go through the built environment spreadsheet tonight, and we haven't even really looked at it. I don't think we're ready. I don't think we're ready. And we also, we had a really long meeting last 2 weeks ago, so I think a lot of us would like to go home before 11. At any rate, thanks for that input.
John, I don't think you're gonna get a 100% non-controversial on anything. Now, you can explain why you can build a consensus.
Mhm.
But I mean, we had opposition to the dog park, so.
You're probably right. I would correct it to say largely non.
Yes, sir.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Well, I had attended some of their meetings this summer. People gave their input on what they wanted it to be. And then I expected in November, we're gonna have this plan, but looking this over, it seems very, very general. It looks like a lot more work has to be done.
A lot more work needs to be done.
Yeah.
So, there's, don't really have a plan.
It's a work in progress.
Identify yourself. Would you identify yourself or?
Carol Angelino.
Thank you.
But we still encourage public participation every step of the way, and in fact, you know, the fact that we are where we are, it's definitely a work in progress.
So how much more of this is go on?
I think we had initially aimed for November to be further along, but we also knew that it probably was gonna take longer, and then simultaneously, the strategic plan kind of came along, and that, you know, we did want to see what that turned out to be. Erin, do you want to add anything as far as timing goes?
No, I think we had fall as adoption, or, you know, early winter, I guess. And as John had reminded the commission before, that there's not a penalty for not
Being right on
completing
time.
an update within, you know, a certain, it's, you know, you notify the state and let them know that you're continuing to work on that. We still have ample opportunity in our budget to continue working on this, and I think you're moving at a pace that you're comfortable with, you know, trying to work out feedback from the public and how to properly word that into goals and actions. So that's fine. I don't think we want to be working on this next summer. So I think but I think you'll see, you know, once you may see pieces, you know, a table and, you know, the introductions and a natural and built, but I think once you see them working together, once you merge them, you'll realize that you do have quite a bit of your document already drafted.
I did as an
That it's
exercise.
not,
I went through the
you
agenda.
haven't made progress.
I went through the agendas for 2023, just because I felt like, wait, I'm not feeling comfortable with the built environment yet. And so I sort of went back to see, it's, if you look at our agenda topics for the plan of conservation and development, it's a very logical progression. And so we've been tackling it as I think you said, Bob, that, you know, we focus on it for the few hours we're here, but then we don't always continue that in between. And, you know, maybe as we build up a little more momentum here and more substance, we can work on it more in between and start refining. But this is great time for public feedback, so we really appreciate it.
Say, the beach and recreation, Commission, update beach and park facility master plan. And one more public, get involved in something like that.
What's the question?
How does the public get involved with certain specifics like beach and recreation plan?
Well, that would be a public process that the Beach and Recreation Commission would undertake. You know, I think their latest plan was from the 1980s. So, yeah, I mean, these are town agencies and all of their meetings are public, and any master planning that they do should include the public. It's your town, and they clearly want to have your input as far as uses and you know, the long-term plans for each individual park.
But take that as a warning too, because once you start getting involved, if you show too much interest. But does that help you know where we are now, and you can see what the process is like? Sometimes it's very organized and we blast right through things, and other evenings we have this kind of step outside the box for a second, take a deep breath and make sure we're going the right way. And then we have professionals guiding us, thankfully. Erin and John. Because there are, I think a lot of the public doesn't understand how many
We'll put both
statutes and
professional
regulations.
and guidance in quotes.
But we do appreciate it and keeping us in line and keeping us educated of what has to be included and how. Yeah. Penny, did you wanna?
Penny Katz. I'd just like to say you're spending a lot of time and effort. And the end product should be a workable, living, viable document to build upon now and in the future. And not just put it in a binder so that when the state comes and says, by the way, can I see your POCD? You hand them the binder and they say, well, you have all the elements. But is it viable?
That's a really good point, and I think that's something about the 2013 POCD that we learned from. In fact, it was separate PDFs for each section even, so, you know, just managing that, and yeah, they covered so much, it was really impressive, and we're even building on that, because one of the first things we did was look to see what didn't they get done, because it was a lot, and then, you know, scale back that, and a lot of people's points of what's viable, what's attainable. And to Chris's point
But
here,
also
even-
you have the strategic plan, which was, I believe, very costly for the town to have put together. And there's got to be a way to examine the public input from that and help you formulate this.
we did, we collected all that
Mhm.
information.
That's exactly, that was the goal, was to combine some of those public outreach efforts during the process because they were running concurrently, rather than asking people to fill out multiple surveys and
surveys.
things of the same. So we fed questions into those surveys as part of the process to get the feedback. And all of those reports from the interviews, the internal staffing, you know,
Meetings, yeah.
and then the working groups and the
The
public,
retreat.
what did they call it? It wasn't, was it a,
SPAC,
no, it was the initial, I forget what I can't think of the word, but anyways, it was,
Forum.
yeah, it was like a forum, a public
Right.
forum. All of that feedback was put into a report and shared. Absolutely.
I think some of that's on the site too.
Some is online and
Some
we
of those
have,
summaries, yeah.
I mean, I have, you know, copies here that we did share as well.
All right, well, where do we go from here?
I think you said it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good opportunity. We'll unify all of the comments that we've had so far, the edits we've made to both the natural environment spreadsheet and some of the built environment reorg. Throw them all in the same document so it all looks to be in one piece. And I'll send this out to Aaron this evening for distribution, and I think we can revisit this. And between I would hope for comments, and then between now and next meeting, we will flesh out sort of the top half of built environment so it looks more like natural environment in terms of its introductory sections and analysis of existing plans and commissions and entities and that sort of thing.
Great, that sounds good. And we can still keep looking through these action items and see.
Of course.
Is the plan then to make the built environment spreadsheet look like the natural environment spreadsheet?
I think so.
I mean, that's the talking about implementation, but yeah, what the changes that you've made to the natural environment spreadsheet, we reorganized some goals. We actually consolidated a couple of policy areas. I've updated that in the full working draft, so everything will be sort of updated to the current state of conversation.
Okay, if we're going, because one of the actions I took was to the subcommittee concept to reevaluate how the spreadsheet was organized with the prior idea of goals and all. I present that the full commission for a critique and reorganization and change that. I just want to be sure that, John, that your team's not doing a lot of work that
Yeah.
may unwind if we change how we do this. So I just want to be sure.
Or should we wait for yours first and then?
If you just putting
Well,
pieces
mine,
together,
mine's sort of ready to go. I think
Okay,
it may just be that a small number of us need to get into a locked room and yell at each other for a little while.
Yeah. Great.
Well, thank you
I'm,
for being
I'm up for it.
That's great.
Great job. Tolerant. Yes.
Tolerant?
Okay.
Any
All
other
right.
comments or
No,
discussion or?
but I agree
This
with
was not what I was expecting this evening, but I think it was really good.
The only thing I
Very
I agree with Bob.
Erin, any other thoughts,
Nope.
comments?
I think we have a plan and we'll,
Let me guess.
yeah, I guess my only comment is, I'm assuming, Bob Reinhardt, you're gonna be looking at the draft, the language in what John is sending out
Yes.
to make your comments as far as goals versus actions, rather than focusing on the implementation table.
Yeah, I didn't look at all of that, but the
Okay.
organization part, I don't, that to me, that's the next step.
So let's focus on
Right.
this
I
draft.
stopped at the action item top.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yep, we're on the same page.
Okay.
That's
I
great.
already did it for natural environment, except for section D, which I can't get my head around.
Okay.
So I'll give it to you.
So we can circle that.
Thank you,
Great.
John.
Okay, folks.
John, thanks again.
All right, we'll see you.
I look forward to the yelling session.
Good night.
Right. Great.
All right, here's my agenda. Erin, did you want to go over
You have multiple pending applications.
pending?
None of which require action. Everything is tabled. The only item, would be under receipts, would be where you would need to take some action. Which would be scheduling a public hearing for, site plan application and, downtown village district major alteration at 48A and 48B Wall Street. And the date of December 21st would be the next second meeting of the month that would be available for public hearing.
48A and B, can you just give us?
What's the?
Where are they?
Is it sort of
It's the vacant parcels right next to Moxie.
next to Moxie, which is now a Mexican restaurant?
Yes.
Right, okay.
There's a
Okay.
small parcel in the rear
I think so, yeah.
and that has a,
Okay, so could I have a motion to schedule a public hearing? 23-51, 48A, 48B Wall Street.
Motion.
Second, John Doucette, any further discussion? All good, it's on, and it's for December.
December 21. Yeah, that's right.
Hope some of you will be here.
Yes.
And then Aaron, 1320 Boston Post Road.
this is a site plan and a site plan modification and coastal site plan application. This is for formalizing the outdoor dining at Donahue's
Okay.
Restaurant and the tent within the
Oh.
existing parking lot.
Do I
And
need-
that, yes, because we didn't have any action items for this evening, it's just tabled for review and action on November 16th.
16.
It does not require a public hearing.
Okay, great.
Is this it's a temporary structure or a permanent structure?
It's a seasonal tent,
Seasonal.
but it's an approval that wouldn't, permanent approval, I guess.
Yeah, they
right?
can continually do it. They can
Yes,
continually-
that they would do that, have outdoor dining seasonal. It's not enclosed.
Okay, great. So moving on to minutes.
Sure. October 19th, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, on members present, Snow, Duza, Reinhardt, Peckleball, Connor, Morgan, and Bugda. So motion for approval?
Actually.
Yes. So motion to approve, Carol?
Yes, I
All
motion.
right, second? I'll second. Thank you, Michael. comments,
Comments.
corrections?
I just noticed a couple of people's names, of the public attendees were missing.
Yes.
So, there was James, and I think it's James Kuku. I looked it up by the, he's at 279 Boston Post Road. And then actually Penny Cat spoke, but her last name didn't get included, so we should make sure that that's. And address 360.
No insult intended.
Okay, yes, Raquel would
Okay, great.
take note of that.
Maybe we can wait for some more public comments,
We're-
What else on the minutes?
unless it was the minutes, but.
Are we only talking, so we're talking now only about the minutes.
Right.
Any other corrections or edits?
No.
I thought it was overall a good summary of a lot of material.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay, vote to approve? Favor? Unanimous? Okay,
John? Any other comments
Are we on remarks?
or remarks?
I wanted to, I know I sent an email asking about availability for a site walk. It was determined at the last meeting that we would schedule a site walk of the general's residence property. The date that we would look at because of daylight savings time would be Saturday, the 11th, instead of this Saturday, which is still ahead of your meeting. So I wanted to throw that out to you to see that we could get a quorum for attendance. It's a relatively short meeting. I know most of you haven't had the opportunity to do site walks. We do them often with the Inland Wetlands Agency. Site walks are really just for observation purposes. There's not any discussion. It's a request to have the applicant identify where on the site the subject area is for you to visualize that.
Boundaries, yeah.
But there is a benefit, I guess, of all of us going together as during a public hearing. There's no, you're in the middle of a public hearing, so you can't receive public input outside of the meeting. So if that's agreeable, I don't know if you have a preferred hour.
You can't do it.
It won't work for me. It's the Michigan game that weekend, so in Happy Valley.
So,
Yeah.
but we would have,
Bob can't make it.
I can make it, but
Yeah, I'm gonna-
there's no reason for the rest
So,
of us
Mike,
not to continue.
Carol,
Do we have to be there even though we're familiar with it already?
Janet has said she knows the
I
property.
mean, I live right across the street. I know it.
And same
Right,
about
well,
John
if we-
Morgan.
well, if we need a quorum, I may ask
That's what I
you to
mean, so I
join.
have to be
Yeah.
there.
Well, that's what I'm, John, are you available on the 11th?
I can join if you need a quorum. Yes, I can join if you need a quorum.
So John, Carol, Mike,
Maybe Jeff?
John Dusa.
could join.
Well, Jeff is.
Yeah, I can join. I need,
Hearing, so
Oh, I see.
Jeff says he can join too.
okay.
So what time would it be?
We were saying in the morning.
is the
Morning's
morning
okay.
okay?
9 a.m.?
9 is
Nine.
okay?
Nine's okay?
Yeah, the earlier the better to me in my, so we can get on with our day.
Yeah.
That's good.
As long as
Where
it's
would we? convene?
reasonable.
That's how I.
Well, we would meet on site.
Okay, that's the title of parking area.
So park on,
So you could park on Burnbar
Burnbar
Lane
Lane.
and cross the street or
Okay.
park on Scotland.
You can park on my driveway.
There's
There's
enough parking that you'd be able to get there, and I can kind of direct you, as part of our agenda of where the best spot to be. So, okay, so that would be 11 at 9 a.m. And we'll set up a special meeting
Parking
notice
don't stop.
and send that out.
great, thanks, Erin.
Thank
That
you,
works. Thank you, Aaron.
thank
They
you.
were deeply offended.
All right, so we have a new person who's arrived. Did you want to say something?
This came from the debate. I would have been here earlier. I don't mean to seem like I'm just slipping in. I just wanted to say something about, for the record last time, because Attorney McKeon, I think you represented that you were representing the Goddards.
We can't talk about
What matter are you looking to discuss?
To see
I
the
just
road.
wanted to make sure that the record was clear about, who the players were in the meeting.
The public hearing is closed for the PDD. Is that what you're referring to? Your
I'm referring
application?
For, correction for.
There's no, the minutes are as they're noted, but there's no further public comment on that. The commission is in deliberation on that.
Okay, so could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Janet gets the, oh, second from, any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous.
John
Thank
is a
you
yes.
all for this discussion.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raquel.
Good
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.